In any habitat, plants, animals, and microbes interact in various ways to form a community. When populations of two different species interact, it leads to interspecific interactions. Such interactions may benefit, harm, or have a neutral effect on one or both species. Using a plus sign for beneficial interaction, minus sign for detrimental or harmful interaction, and 0 for neutral interaction, the possible outcomes of the interspecific interactions are shown in the table. During competition, both species lose out during the interaction, while in parasitism, the interspecific interaction benefits one species and harms the other. During the stages of evolution, several species may have competed with each other for survival. Darwin had therefore mentioned that competition was a powerful force in the organic evolution as species struggled for survival. Competition may occur between closely related species, for instance, sheep and goat grazing the same meadows in the Himalayas, as well as unrelated species for the same limiting resources. For example, the visiting flamingos and the resident fish in the shallow lakes of South America compete for zooplankton, their common food. In some cases, limiting resources may not lead to competition. This is because the feeding efficiency of one species is reduced in the presence of another species, even if resources are abundant. Such a competition is known as interference competition. Therefore, competition is best defined as a process in which the fitness of one species, measured in terms of its intrinsic rate of natural increase, or R, is significantly lowered in the presence of another species. To explain competitive release, Connell conducted field experiments on the rocky sea coasts of Scotland using Balanus and Cathamalus. The experiment showed that the larger and competitively superior barnacle Balanus dominated the intertidal area and excluded the smaller barnacle Cathamalus from that zone. However, some recent studies do not support such generalizations about competition. Although they do not reject the occurrence of interspecific competition, they propound that species facing competition might evolve mechanisms to promote coexistence rather than exclusion. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. That is, if two species compete for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing different developing or foraging patterns. For example, two competing species of monkey that consume the fruit of the same species of tree will avoid competition by choosing different trees growing in the same forest. An experiment conducted by MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Apart from competition, parasitism is another interspecific interaction observed in nature. In a parasitic mode of life, the parasite gets food from the host. Thus, parasitism is advantageous and has developed in many taxonomic groups from plants to higher vertebrates. In fact, many parasites have evolved to be host-specific. In such cases, both the host and the parasite tend to co-evolve. That is, if the host develops special mechanisms for resisting its parasite, the parasite too evolves mechanisms to counteract them to continue its association with the same host species. For instance, secretions from the human digestive system help to kill parasites that enter it, while the parasites adapt themselves to resist their host. Besides, many parasites have a complex life cycle as they depend on one or two intermediate hosts or vectors. Did you know that the female mosquito is not a parasite, but is a vector as it carries the malarial parasite Plasmodium? Depending on where parasites live, they are classified as ectoparasites or endoparasites. Parasites that feed on the surface of a host are called ectoparasites, while those that live inside a host are called endoparasites. Some common examples of ectoparasites are ticks, lice, and cuscuta. On the other hand, tapeworms and hookworms are examples of endoparasites. Although the life cycles of these parasites have become complex, their morphological and anatomical features have simplified. Since parasites are partially or totally dependent on a host, they have developed special adaptations such as the loss of a digestive system and other unnecessary sense organs such as eyes, a high reproductive capacity, and the presence of adhesive organs or suckers to hold on to the host. Studies show that a large number of parasites are detrimental to their hosts as they make them more susceptible to predation by making them physically weak, reduce their growth, survival, reproduction, as well as reduce the size of their population. Interestingly, a few birds show brood parasitism, in which the parasitic bird lays its eggs in a host's nest for incubation. Additionally, during the course of evolution, the eggs of such parasitic birds have grown to resemble the host's eggs with regard to size and color to minimize the chances of being detected by the host bird. Thus, interspecific interactions such as parasitism and competition guarantee the survival and reproduction of species.